Here's how you can realistically buy a home in 2023. To borrow from a bank, you usually need a 20% deposit. So if you want to buy a $750K property, 20% of that would be $150K, which most of us don't have lying around. So to get around that, you can instead pay a fee. Policy-wise, lending people over 80% of a home's value can be a risky move for a bank. But with this fee, the bank feels protected and home loans with deposits under 20% are made possible. So this fee, which can be paid over time or once off, is called lender's mortgage insurance. The amount of the LMI will depend on the deposit you have and the price of the house you want to buy. Even though this insurance technically covers the bank, the beauty of LMI is that it still allows you to buy a house when a 20% deposit is out of reach. To find out more about LMI, head to Geelong Bank's website.
Okay, we did it. Mortgage interest rates are in the 8% for the first time in 23 years. And the market's not crashing. And aside from a seasonal slowdown, the prices are not coming down. However, if you can afford to buy right now, it is the best time to buy, even despite the 8% interest rates. If you can afford to buy right now. I have so many buyers that I have been working with that are standing on the sidelines waiting because they have been pushed out of this market. They literally cannot afford to buy a home. But the second those interest rates come down, guess what? Me and all my buyers, we're going shopping. And so are all the other buyers out there. If you can afford your payment with an 8% interest rate now, or even negotiate a buy down, the market times are getting longer. Sellers are doing price reductions. This is a heck of a time to get out there if you can afford to buy a house right now to negotiate. Otherwise, you're going to be competing with everyone else out there.
Yeah, here's an article that's reckless and dangerous, and don't fall for it whatsoever. Because over the next 3-4 months, prices are going down. Prices are being slashed everywhere. There are no buyers in the marketplace. So you are going to see across the country in various cities, sharp drops in prices. Over the next 90 days, you're going to see it. There's nothing that can stop it. Nothing's going to change it. So this little dip you think you're going to see isn't going to be a little dip like last year. It isn't like last year. What you're going to see is a free fall, and it's going to continue next year. There's not going to be a big upswing in the spring like there was last year. Don't let anyone sell you on that, because it's not happening. All right? So be careful of articles like this that say, oh, it's, this is your opportunity to buy in the dip and stuff like that. No, we're getting ready for a free fall. So don't buy into this whole nonsense that it's just going to be a little dip and that's your opportunity, because let me tell you something, that is not your opportunity. Your opportunity would be more like 2-3 years from now. So if you're looking to buy, just be patient. You'll be rewarded. Like and follow for more.
Turns out that almost everybody in America thinks it's a terrible time to buy a house. Fannie Mae, which is one of the leading sources of mortgage financing, put out a survey asking people how they feel about the housing market. And 84% of people said it was a terrible time to buy. And you don't really have to be a rocket scientist to figure out why it's such a horrible time to buy a house right now. The mortgage rate is at a 23-year high. Houses are incredibly overpriced. Even the rent isn't coming down, although inflation came down, and that's a whole other story about greedflation. Right now, America's national home price is $430,000. In 2019, it was $391,000. And if that doesn't seem like a huge difference, let's talk about how a high mortgage rate actually completely can affect whether you can afford your monthly payments for a home. Say you bought a home in 2019. The house price was $400,000 and your mortgage rate was 3.94%. If you put 20% down, then your average monthly payment would be around $2,277. And that total includes property tax and home insurance. Now, what happens when we try to buy the same house in 2023? Everything is exactly the same. House is $400,000. We are putting 20% down. We are buying in Jersey City. The only difference is the mortgage rate, which is 7.93. What's our monthly payment? It's almost $1,000 more. Your monthly payment is around $3,092. For a lot of Americans, it's an unsustainable monthly payment. When mortgage rates are this high, house prices should be lower, but they're not, because we've heard this all before, we don't have enough homes. In the US, builders don't feel incentivized to build because they're not going to make a lot of money, and then people who own homes don't want to sell. unless they make a killing because they saw their neighbors making a ton of money selling during the pandemic and they want to make the same. Something we don't talk about is how many Americans live alone in single-family homes. More than a quarter of Americans have a one-person household. This graph is from the US Census Bureau. There is a large amount of people over the age of 65 that are living alone. And sometimes these people are living in 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 square foot homes. And they're most likely going to live in those homes for another few decades. So America is sort of stuck, right? It's not just that we have really high interest rates and people can't afford homes. We don't have enough homes. I think in order to fix this, America needs a national home building program. Just like how we had the New Deal, I think we need to make a new house deal. I think there needs to be regulation on investors and how many homes they buy because they're pricing out real residents and first-time homebuyers. And I actually think first-time homebuyers should have a lower mortgage rate than somebody buying like their third, fourth, fifth home.
Do you think we're going to see a flood of home inventory, or do you think the market's going to remain tight for an extended period of time?
I have talked for quite a while about how the Federal Reserve has put a poison pill into the real estate market, and that poison pill is the low rate mortgages. 25% of the people in the country have a mortgage at or below 3%. 65% of the people in the country have a mortgage at or below 4%. 42% of all the homes in the country have no mortgage at all. So it is very hard to see that any of these people will become distressed. And if you want to have a real estate crash and you want to have increasing inventory, you must have distressed sellers or homeowners. And it is just very unlikely that there's going to be any major amount of distress. When you look at the delinquency rates on mortgages, whether they're 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days behind or in the foreclosure process, they are extremely low. In fact, they're at some of the lowest points in history right now. Because of these low rates, people do not want to let go of those mortgages. They do not want to sell their homes. Most of those mortgages have about 28 years left on them. So there is likely to be a housing shortage for quite a while to come. A normal housing market, if you look at Alto's stats, which I use more than National Association of Realtors stats because they calculate it differently, but a normal housing market has somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.2 million homes for sale. Right now, we only have 460,000 homes for sale. During the worst, most savagely short-supplied era of the COVID market, we had about 240,000 homes for sale at any given time. So inventory has increased with the higher interest rates, and demand has decreased, but still people are just reluctant to put their homes up for sale. There's no incentive. Why would they give up the cheap mortgage to go and take an expensive mortgage, right? There's just no incentive for them to do that.
It's 2023 and we're living in a housing crisis. Not only are houses averaging around $400,000, but people that are getting approved for mortgages are paying even way more than what they were paying before. Remember when people used to make the argument of, why are you paying rent when you could be paying less in mortgage? Not anymore. Hearing people paying $2,000, $3,000 for mortgage is scary. But what's even scarier is the rental market. The average rent right now is about $2,000. But obviously in some areas it's cheaper and some areas it's higher. There is no rental cap, y'all. We could be sitting here right now in 3 months saying, oh, the average rent is $2,400, $2,500. It's only going up. We're seeing an increase of people that are living back with their parents, which there's nothing wrong with that. We're seeing people relocate to areas they've never been to just simply so they can afford somewhere to live. We're also seeing an increase in scammers and squatters. Now, I'm not saying scammers and squatters did not exist a couple years ago, but I feel like it's worse now than it's ever been before.
Asked a lot about what's going to happen with the real estate market the rest of this year and the first part of 2024. Here's my prediction. Because interest rates are not going to come down, there is not going to be a big rush for people to buy. So prices will probably stay pretty steady, even though there's not a lot of inventory, even though it's technically a seller's market. Nobody's lining up to buy because interest rates are higher. So what's going to happen is rates are going to stay high through the winter. Christmas sales are going to be really slow. The housing market will continue to suffer, but it will not crash. It's just going to soften. After the softening, what will happen is watch the first couple of weeks of February into late February. Watch for an emergency meeting of the Fed and interest rates being brought down about 0.5 point. That's what's going to happen. 50 basis points by March 1st. They can't do it now, but they will do it next year. So housing prices are not going to go up. If you have a home, don't sell. If you don't have a home, buy. The buying opportunity is from now until about January 15th, but do not sell until next March.
How much you need to make to buy a $400,000 home? Your down payment of 3.5% is going to be $14,000. Principal and interest at a rate of 6% is $2,314. Once you add your property taxes, insurance, and PMI, your monthly payment is $3,166. Payments should not be more than 28% of your monthly income, so you need to make $11,307 a month or $135,000 a year.
I want to show you why people are so frustrated with the housing market. Take a look at this house. This house sold for $250,000 just 3 years ago. Beautiful home, a pool. Look at this beautiful neighborhood. This is an incredible house. And the inside, maybe it was redone, but look how beautiful. $250,000 at a 3% interest rate will put your principal and interest payment around $1,100, and you would have had to make anywhere from $50,000 to $60,000 a year to get into this house just 3 years ago. Fast forward to today, this is what $250,000 gets you. At an 8% interest rate would be $1,800 a month for principal and interest, and you'd have to make about $75,000 to $80,000 to qualify. So you can see why people are frustrated, because just 3 years ago, the difference of where your money could go and what you could actually afford. I don't think people are necessarily complaining or blaming, but I think you can empathize with the frustration, because we've all been pitched this American dream with the white picket fence and the tire swing in the neighborhood and the cul-de-sac of riding bikes. And that's why people work hard to get into those neighborhoods. And the rug got pulled out under so many people's feet. So I think we really need to focus on these interest rates. If they can lower the interest rates, people will be able to buy more of a house. Their payment will be lower, and it'll help people get into that home.
I'd like to buy a house. Aw. Are you poor? Well, no. My partner and I both have jobs with a pretty decent combined income. Are you in the 1%? Oh, no. How much do you have in your trust fund? I don't have a trust fund. How many businesses do you own? Well, I have an Etsy shop that makes fun earrings.
Margaret, we've got another poor that wants to buy a house.
So were you thinking more van, Home Depot shed, or yurt? I was thinking more of a house. Have you considered catfishing an elderly man or woman who does own their own home? Like one who's about to die? Yeah. Yeah, actually.
You're gonna want to check out silversingles.com.
I already have a login.